Alright, so let's go ahead and continue our discussion of fractions. We're going to get into adding and subtracting, and in terms of adding and subtracting, there's two levels of difficulty. We're going to start by adding and subtracting like fractions, which is the easiest. This comes from section 3.1 of your textbook. So first off, when we talk about like fractions and unlike fractions, what do we mean? Like fractions are fractions that have the same denominator. And unlike fractions are fractions that have different denominators. So we're looking at the bottom numbers. So for example, 2/5 and 3/5 are these like fractions or unlike fractions. Because our denominators are the same, these are like fractions. What about 2/3 and 3/4? Here, since our denominators are different, these are unlike fractions. So in this section, we're going to work with fractions like example A. We want our denominators to be the same. We have to do a little bit of work before we can talk about adding unlike fractions, and we'll do that in the next couple sections. Okay, so let's talk about our procedure for adding and subtracting like fractions. So I'm going to give you a quick example that has nothing to do with fractions to kind of give you an idea of how this works. Let's say we have 1 cat plus 2 cats. This is equal to 3 cats. We do the same thing when we talk about adding and subtracting fractions, so let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Let's say we have 1/4 plus 2/4. Well, this is equal to 3/4. So we can treat the denominator kind of like a unit. And what did we just do? We technically just added fractions. If we put this in fraction notation now, we have 1/4 plus 2/4 equals 3/4. So now let's look at this and see what we did. Our procedure to add like fractions or subtract like fractions, we're going to work with the numerators. Here, how did we get from 1 and 2 to 3? Well, we add 1 plus 2. So that's going to be our first step. Add or subtract the numerators. Notice here, my denominator stays the same all the way across. We keep the same denominator. And that's our trick for adding and subtracting fractions. Now when we are done, we still have one more step that we might need to do. Our last step has nothing to do with adding and subtracting. It has to do with the fact that we always like to simplify our fraction. So that will be our next step. Simplify the fraction by dividing by common factors, if possible. And if possible, also write as a mixed number. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into some examples and see what we can do. All right, if we look at example A, we have 2/9 plus 5/9. I'm going to add my numerators. We get 2 plus 5 is 7. We keep the denominator, and we get 7/9. 7/9 is a simplified fraction. It is in lowest terms, and so we are done. Pretty easy, right? All right, so let's go ahead and try some other examples. Let's come to example B. We have 3 over 8 plus 1 over 8. We're going to combine the tops. 3 plus 1 is 4 over, keep the denominator, we get 8. This is not in lowest terms. 4 and 8 are both divisible by 4. So let's go ahead and divide by 4, and we get 1/2. 1/2 is in lowest terms, so we are done. All right, let's try a couple more. Example C. We're going to start by adding the tops. We get 3 plus 1 is 4. Keep the bottom, so we get 4 over 16. 4 and 16 are both divisible by 4. And if we divide by 4, we get 1 over 4. All right, 1 over 4 is in lowest terms, so we are done. All right, example D. If we go ahead and start by adding the tops, we get 7 plus 11 is 18 over 12. Now we got two things going on here. We do need to simplify the fraction, and we also need to convert to a mixed number. And so it's up to you how you want to do it. It doesn't matter either way. Me personally, I always like simplifying first. That way when I do my long division, my numbers are a little bit more reasonable. Both of these numbers are divisible by 6. And if we divide by 6, we get 3 over 2. Now this, you probably already know what this is equal to. If you do, that's fantastic. If not, we can go ahead and figure it out. We're going to divide 2 into 3. 2 goes into 3 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. Subtract, we get 1. And so as a mixed number, this is equal to 1/1/2. That will be my final answer. It is simplified, and it is a mixed number. Okay, so that takes care of some addition problems. So now let's go ahead and look at subtraction. And same thing applies to subtraction. So again, we're going to subtract the tops. 5 minus 1 is 4. We keep the bottom, so we get 4 over 6. This is not in lowest terms, so I want to divide by the greatest common factor, which is 2. And we get 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 2 over 3 is in lowest terms. All right, example F. Same thing, we're going to subtract the tops. 16 minus 7 is 9. Keep the bottom, so we get 9 over 10. 9 over 10 is in lowest terms, and so we are done. All right, a couple more. Example G. If we subtract the tops, we get 15 minus 3 is 12. Keep the bottom. Is this in lowest terms? The answer is no. What can I divide by? The largest thing I can divide by is 4. So if we divide by 4, we get 12 divided by 4 is 3. 16 divided by 4 is 4. All right, one more. All right, so H, we have 25 minus 6. We're going to subtract our tops. 25 minus 6 is 19. Keep the bottom, and we get 19 over 32. All right, that takes care of our adding and subtracting. Let's go ahead and bring in our sign numbers now. So remember that when we combine sign numbers, if they have same signs, we add and keep the sign. And if they have different signs, we subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. All right, so if we look at example I, we have like fractions. Do we have same signs or different signs? We do have same signs, so I'm going to add the tops. We get 4 plus 2 is 6. I keep the sign, and I keep the denominator. I can also simplify this. 6 and 9 are both divisible by 3. And if we divide by 3, we get negative 2 over 3. And we're done. All right, example J, we have negative 8 over 11 plus 5 over 11. Do we have same signs or different signs? Here we have different signs because we do have a negative 8 and a positive 5. So we are going to subtract, keep the sign of the larger number. We get negative 3. And now we keep the denominator. This is in lowest terms, so we are done. All right, example K. Do we have same signs or different signs? For this one, we do have different signs. Remember, we're going to treat this as positive 5 over 12. We're going to treat this as negative 9 over 12. So since we have different signs, we want to subtract. We get 4. We keep the sign of the larger number. 9 is larger. It was negative, so we're going to keep this as negative 4 over. Keep the denominator. We get 12. I can simplify this. Both of these numbers are divisible by 4. And if we divide by 4, we get negative 1 over 3. All right, example L. The first thing I want to do is I do have a minus and negative. So just like when we worked with the integers, we also want to go ahead and change any minus and negatives to a plus sign. All right, so now if I look at this, I have negative 3 plus 5. We have different signs, so I'm going to subtract, keep the sign of the larger number. 5 is larger, it is positive. And now I keep the denominator. From there, we can go ahead and simplify. Both 2 and 8 are divisible by 2. And if we divide by 2, we get 1/4. All right, so hopefully this was an easy section for you. Hopefully it makes sense. In the next section, we're going to start talking about, well, what if they are not like fractions? Does that mean we can't add them? And the answer is no. So we're going to go ahead and talk about how to set up problems that have unlike denominators. All right, go ahead, do your homework, take a break, and I will see you again shortly.